So if he wanted to, he could go up to the attic and count the bones. For every bone you find up there in that attic, she said to him, you can add a year of my life. Well, he counted the bones for a day and a night, and still he couldn't make a dent in them. His hands, they say, were shaking as he pulled at the door handle and left. A few years ago, on the opening night of a women's retreat that I was leading on the far coastal tip of the Beira Peninsula in southwest Ireland, heartland of Cailleach folklore, I had a dream about her. I was part of a small group of resistance fighters, women and men together. We were captured by the establishment's military, then securely locked away in a prison with thick stone walls. I spoke to the leader through the bars of our cell door. You'd better be careful, I said. She's coming. He laughed and shook a set of big, shiny keys in my face. Just as he turned away from me, there was a rumbling outside, like thunder. A giant old woman in a black hooded cloak walked right through the prison walls as if they weren't there, and all the stones came tumbling down around her feet. The iron door to our cell crashed to the floor, and we walked right out of that prison behind her. I'll go for that. In 2018, in the middle of the night and in the throes of some rather cloudier dream, I woke up suddenly and proclaimed the word Hagitude to an empty, silent room, as you do. I had no idea what it meant or where it had come from, but the next morning, I realized it was going to be the title of my next book. Hagitude, Hags with Attitude. Like the Cailleach and all the other feisty aging women of European myth and folklore who we've so thoroughly buried, just as we've relegated the aging women of contemporary life to the shadows. They're the inconvenient ones, the invisible ones. The overculture would so like to pretend they're not there. On the threshold of elderhood, celebrating 60 years on this beautiful, troubled planet as I complete this book, I have no intention of being invisible, but I'm quite prepared to be inconvenient. As inconvenient as the Cailleach was to the Christian priests who tried to stamp out her memory, and failed. Failed because everywhere you go in Scotland and Ireland, there are stories about her. There are places in every county named after her, mountains that are believed to embody her, and ancient monuments where her presence is still honoured. But really, why should the Cailleach matter now? Why should the other fierce and shining old women of European myth and folklore who populate the chapters of this book matter? Why should any of these old stories matter? Aren't they just ancient history? Nice to know, but irrelevant to our infinitely more sophisticated lives today? Well, they matter because the ways in which we think about aging depend on the stories we tell about it. How we think about aging women depends on the images we hold of them. And the images we hold of aging women today aren't healthy. Truth is, there is no clear image of enviable female elderhood in the contemporary cultural mythology of the West. It's not an archetype we recognize anymore. In our culture, old women are mostly ignored, encouraged to be inconspicuous, or held up as objects of derision and satire. But our old mythology and folklore tell us something very much more interesting, that it hasn't always been so. In our more distant past, as of course in many indigenous cultures today, female elders were respected and had important and meaningful roles to play. They are the ones who hold the myths and the wisdom stories, the ones who know where the medicine plants grow and what their uses are. They serve as guides for younger adults. They're the caregivers and mentors for the community's children. They know when the community is going to the dogs, and they're not afraid to speak out and say so. When they do, they're listened to. Their focus is on giving back, on bringing out, for the sake of earth and community, the hard-earned wisdom which they've grown within themselves. It's not surprising that these old myths and stories of Europe that I'm offering up should be populated with European women. Although migration has been a major force throughout human history, most of these old folk tales have their roots in poor, often rural communities, in which travel, either in or out, was much less of an option, and in which there was much less diversity than we experience in our world today. But that doesn't mean that they exclude others. These stories